Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Harold. I'm the emotion chemist. Emotion is all I know. I find this crossroad between emotion and cannabis. And emotion is the vehicle that make cannabinoids water compatible, so you can infuse into beverages and even for patients. So Vertosa is the ingredient provider. We focus on these ingredients to power our clients, which are mostly cannabis beverage brands. So innovation for us is go with the market and with the limited resource, know what to innovate and what the innovate immediate return is to the market and what kind of problem we solve for the industry. So thank you.
Hey, I'm James Boelle. I am Facility Advisor and Business Development Manager in Latin America for Athena. Come from a background of biology and plant breeding and a lot of sustainable land ag dev. Yeah, right now an interesting time in Latin America with a lot of new markets opening up and constant regulatory changes. Innovation for us, like agriculture being something that's so old and can sometimes move at a pretty slow pace, is realistically identifying market needs and facilitating cultivators to be able to, serve the, end clients, be it fabricators or actual users. And so that means standardizing practices, ensuring quality, and making something that's translatable between all those regulatory environments.
Very interesting. Hi, I'm Sanchez, Rael, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Azuca. And Azuca innovates around oral delivery systems for cannabinoids. So we specialize in fast onset and precise dosing for any form factor that you'd want to ingest orally. Done some innovation around topicals as well. We are in now 33 states in the United States and also here in Puerto Rico, 5 countries, and we've infused over 500 million servings to date. So quite a lovely impact out there for fast onset and precise delivery. And what innovation means in my world right now, so sometimes I call us the brand behind the brands. We're now seeing data that innovation around product premiumization is truly the antidote to what we all have seen as the race to the bottom in the industry. So I think we'll talk a little bit about some recent data from BDSA on that, but that's what it means to me.
Great, thank you. So in today, what we hear is that what we see is a lot of game-changing innovation, but like I said, not a lot of it ends up making it to the user. As someone who did do innovation in the industry for the last 8 years, we would spend a lot of money, a lot of capital, and a lot of money that we were raising on those innovations only for them to die, essentially, right? Never make it to see the end user, whether that's a seed in the cultivation side or that's a human, which a lot of you are going to be, I know a lot of you are talking about. So what would you guys say is the biggest barriers between scientific breakthroughs and market success?
Who want to go first?
So I'm a recovering venture capitalist from the technology world, and so before I came into cannabis, sort of classic early stage venture, and it was this concept of crossing the chasm. How do you take an innovation and get it across the chasm into commercial adoption? Is always a challenge for entrepreneurs. So you can have a wonderful product and never get product market fit or run out of capital. Saw that dozens of times as a venture capitalist. Now, come into cannabis as a founder and operator, and you don't have a market, you have hundreds of markets because of the regulatory frame. And you cannot move product across state lines. So the business challenge of crossing the chasm now is orders of magnitude more complex, especially for any product that actually has active cannabinoids in it. So I think the real game changer for us has been to figure out how to build a business model to take a technology, and what we've done at Azuca is we created a deployment model for our fast onset solutions whereby we ship to a partner, a plant-touching partner in any jurisdiction. We ship a product called Activator, which is a non-infused precursor ingredient, and we provide the SOPs and a mixing device, a thermal mixer, pre-programmed so that our partners can put their active with our activator precursor into this mixer, and in 1 hour you have your infusion to then put into your fast-acting gummy or syrup or beverage or any orally ingestible product. So it's just like the complexity and the challenge to create a business model to be able to build a large market footprint, cross the chasm, but not be able to move product it's like the most insane business challenge I've ever seen.
Right, and I mean, how about when you don't have the same constraints that Kim's talking about? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Harold.
We do have the same constraints. Similar to Azuca. I think Azuca's whole business is the innovation, the micro-emotion, self-assemble technology. Our emotion is non-emotion. Non-emotion, you have to add energy into the system. So in order for us to support our clients across different states, we have to pilotize the whole equipment into the Pelican cases. We ship them to any states, and our technician will fly there, he will assemble everything, emulsify, reassemble, and leave. So this is our way of dealing with this constraints. But constraint always spur innovation, right? If without this constraint, we don't have this value to provide to the industry. So again, I'm not advocating for consistently keep this constraint, but it spurs our innovation.
I think the biggest hurdles realistically are twofold between sort of satisfying the complex regulatory requirements and compliance requirements, and also demonstrating that something's actually monetizable. And so, we'd all, in an ideal world, be able to have these lofty long-term research goals, and I'd love to be in the lab and in the greenhouse constantly. But you're not going to get anything perfect right away, and things need to be developed and presented to the market that keep cash flow going, and that's where stuff gets tricky. You can show a financial plan that shows billions of dollars in cash flow 10 years down the road, but realistically, how are we getting there? And so it's, honestly, bridging reality of compliance and cash flow with the goals and the ideals of research.
Exactly, and so we all are constrained by capital, right? I know this is a capital markets title here, but at the end of the day, what we do know is that we've all been to enough panels, enough conferences this year to see that no one is really investing. So it's like what we're doing with the money we have and how we can work with constraints that are in front of us. And you guys have made it very clear that regulatory fragmentation is a pretty big deal and something that needs to be at the very forefront when you're thinking about what you're innovating and how you're going to bring it to commercialization. So what that sparks to me too is so what trade-offs have you guys made? And I know we talk a lot about being scrappy and what that innovation looks like. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on scrappy innovation and the trade-offs that we make as we continue to innovate in this environment.
I mean, scrappy innovation would honestly be having to settle at sometimes for not the absolute ideal, for example, experimental design. Sometimes you've got to do, experiments that are not precisely equal. You've got to look in different climactic subregions. You've got to spend less money in one than the other. And, sometimes that means partnering up with people that have wildly different infrastructure than others. And so then the whole game after that is really sorting through the data and finding significant, conclusions that actually can lead you to develop something that are, facilitating the end user, the cultivator, the extractor, and driving forward the whole industry. And especially now with, fundraising being so difficult, and especially on the international front in Latin America, a lot of people very hesitant to put any dollars in for potential regulatory complications. Just got to make do with what we've got, and sometimes it's not going to be as much as we want, but there's still a lot you can get out of it.
We raised a little bit of seed capital in 2018, and then later went out to try to raise a Series A during the capital nuclear winter of COVID, and there was not a dollar to be had. And as a investor and board member on many startups, I have seen so many companies hit the cash wall. I was sort of a maniac about this company's not going to run out of cash, but we were going to run out of cash. So we had about 6 weeks of cash left, and I had to, like Scrappiness, one of the things we did is we cut the team down to 3 staff members and 2 unpaid founders. So unpaid founders were unpaid for years. And we did kind of, in retrospect, kind of crazy things, but they worked. We never committed to a lease until the company was probably 5 years old. So one of the things we did is we subleased someone else's cannabis kitchen on the night shift during graveyard when they weren't using it, so that we could do innovation and production. I found out like years later that one of my production people was actually sleeping in the warehouse. Because it was in a very strange location back in the early days. I had to lay off some of the people that I brought on were very talented people who were also like decade-long best friends of mine from graduate school and whatnot. I mean, I had to lay off my best friends. So, it's making the hard decisions. Having a 300 square foot subleased, hemp kitchen to do R&D out of. With like 5 people. That was when we started growing again and rehiring staff. Like, we just did every scrappy thing that you could think of to conserve cash, because capital markets hate uncertainty. And although many of us came into this industry thinking that the regulatory uncertainty was going to be on a downward trend, it's actually been on an upward trend, which has made the capital markets even more constrained, I think. So you just have to never bet your business model on the U.S. Congress doing anything. A lot of people did that. Billions of dollars literally have been lost by people betting on the U.S. Congress doing something. I started my career working on Capitol Hill, and I'm like, Congress is nuts. You got to constantly pivot, constantly scan the ecosystem, and make decisions really, really, really quickly.
Well, thank you for sharing the story, Kim. It reminds us we all have our humble beginnings. Our first, Vertosa's first lab is a closet. Our CEO, Bill Larson, built this whole little table for me so I can emulsify using sonicators. We have our humble beginnings. But I think money for innovation, money is needed, but it may be a fallacy because I think true innovation needs curiosity and creativity. I have a friend who works for a big food company. The round they raise is $200 million round. They raise 5 rounds. They need to spend the money, right? They have the money. They have to solve big issues. And sometimes they're all very smart PhDs, very stressed. They lost direction. Yes, they can buy all the equipment and the reagents, but what to innovate? They need to answer to the next round of investor. They need to hit the milestone. So sometimes that can get lost too with so much money. So I think innovation, money can help, but with curiosity and collaboration, like what James mentioned, collaboration with other partners, that can push us to do the work we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and constraints are actually good for creativity, right? When you don't have a lot of money, it forces you to get creative and innovative. And I think the other unexpected outcome for us in the cannabis industry is as a number of the larger cannabis organizations, MSOs, SSOs, have had to cut their costs. Many of them have reduced their R&D spend and shrunk their R&D teams. And unexpectedly, we have positioned ourselves as basically an extension of your product team, and we try to be super, super helpful in supporting our customers who don't have the advantage of having an internal team, and you're developing a hard dissolvable lozenge. Our food scientists can help you do that. So we didn't intend to do that, and we don't charge for that. If someone is licensing our formulations, we just provide that kind of support as a freebie, as a courtesy.
I think that's on the cultivation side, what you're talking about of, so much being cut out on R&D, and for a lot of facilities, people 5 years ago, 10 years ago, were spending 6 figures on consultants every year. A lot of those growers can no longer do that, and that's one thing. Talking about agility and flexibility and making fast decisions, they said Athena, one thing that was identified was, that's a service that a lot of people needed help on, and so invested hard in that, and that's, so you've got so much competition and so much fewer capital, something that really was, differentiating us from, hey, this service is coming along with it. So I think at really every step in the industry, that's become really important, be it fabrication, labs, genetics, anything.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like what I hear you guys saying is that actually lack of capital and the highly fragmented regulatory environment actually spurs more innovation and creates more opportunity, which is actually inspiring, so thank you. So one other thing I just wanted to touch on, I don't think we talked about it when we did our intro, was a week ago, is one of the things that happens in industry, and having worked in academia, is that when things do get tight and the pressure starts to mount, people start to take shortcuts, and scientific rigor can get lost. And so I think with this group, it might be valuable to understand how you maintain the scientific rigor when all that pressure is there, to continue to innovate smartly, making quick decisions, but also not taking any type of risks that'll disservice yourself and or the end user.
I resonate with that. I see us, for example, when a couple years ago we have not a lot of cash to do R&D, and there are 2 keywords: understanding and demonstrating. So whatever R&D you do, you can be understanding, you can figure out the ratio, or you want to demonstrate, create marketing value, right? So usually with limited resource, you want to do both at the same time. you think you understand the ratio, but you want to do some study, and that's it. That's marketing stuff, right? You can go out, but that can work, right? If the results is showing what you expected. But for now, our team is understanding the 2 concepts. We're saying, okay, this study design, are we trying to understand, or are we trying to demonstrate? And knowing this boundary is really helpful. And then we can see the ratio of our distribution of resource. And we want to see more on understanding. Demonstrating is just by nature. After you understand how it works, you can pick, example and demonstrate. So, but a lot of people in a company still want to try to do both. Sometimes they fail.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so now let's kind of move into how we navigate through all of this. So how can science, business, and capital stay aligned, again, during this mounting of pressure and all of the constraints that we're exposed to?
You have to have a business case for your innovation, for your science, unless you are a scientist in a national lab or someplace where you're not in a market. So one of the things that we did recently is we worked with BDSA, one of the large data analytics firms in the industry, to try to answer the question, because we focus on fast onset, is there a business case for fast onset as a premium product, a premium price product? Will consumers pay for that? And I'll give you a few stats from a white paper that we just published with BDSA. But you can go to our website and download the white paper. It's free. Our website is azucatime.com. But a couple of things that are just top lines. Consumers, based on the data, in the US are willing to pay 31% higher retail prices and 39% higher sell-through prices for a fast-acting edible. This looked at 100 milligram gummies normalized as a category across all the states that data was available on in the United States. So brands that had fast-acting, they ranked 100 points higher than brands without. The fast-acting SKUs are a trip driver to dispensaries. Brands that have fast-acting SKUs show up to 50% of their sales are the fast-acting SKUs, and the fast-acting SKU has 4 to 5 times more revenue than a non-fast-acting SKU within the category. So there's a lot of data that says there is a business case for innovation. There also probably is innovation out there that doesn't generate a business case and that consumers won't pay for it. But I think that's the question that researchers, innovators need to ask themselves, and then test the market to see if the market is willing to, pay the price for the innovation. And if not, it's not a business. It might be a great product, but not a business.
Yeah, I agree with all of that 100%. And I think, the bottom line right now as well is all of those have to be aligned, to use a tautology, because they have to be. Anybody who has a company or any sort of organization that doesn't have those three aligned right now is not going to exist, because there's not the flexibility on capital. Nobody's buying into a 10-year business model. Nobody's going to give capital for that and wait to see cash flow. So I think what that drives is breaking things down into components of short-term income. And how do you do that? By really, I guess, identifying whatever your research is producing, is actually producing some sort of a novel niche that somebody is willing to pay a premium for. And so if it's in cultivation, it's something that's gonna comply with with GMP certifications or with ISO. If it's in fabrication, again, it'll be GMP. If it's fast-acting edibles, it's something that's different from another product. If not, everybody would still be buying isolate and distillate gummies. And yeah, so I think more than anything, they're aligned, and they have to be aligned because it's an absolute necessity.
And you are focused too. You have an interesting perspective here too, because you're actually looking at constrained countries and markets that are a little different than us having the regulatory fragmentation from state to state. And so, what strategies? I heard you talk about doing different GMP, different types of strategies here. But what do you believe are the most adaptable across these evolving and very different countries?
So I think adaptable across what is really rapidly changing regulatory frameworks is standardized compliance. And so that's when we talk about EU GMP, that's the gold standard. If you're producing CBD products in Argentina or THC products in Colombia or in Uruguay, if you want to have any chance of selling something at a premium into Germany or Switzerland, you're looking at Control Union or SGS and meeting those standards. And so that's something which in the States, there not being interstate commerce allowed and having very different regulations between Washington or Oregon or Florida, I think that complicates it kind of more there. Whereas because international markets are so nascent, you put the goal right from the get-go on something that's standardized all around, and that also guides infrastructural development, product development, and everything. So you're not planning on one thing and then end up developing and commercializing something totally different down the line.
And I keep hearing the words THC, which I know in this group there's going to be a lot of talk about other cannabinoids. And so I think also it's an important concept to think about what do investors need to know or need to think about, or even what do we need to be thinking about to move beyond just THC in this market as well that is highly constrained.
Yes, THC, more than THC, beyond THC. I think, are we still talking about this topic? I think every conference I go.
We are still talking about this,
yes.
Yes.
Beverage is a testing ground because functional beverages, consumers are close to beverages. So in the beverage community, we already hear brands don't talk about ingredients, even though a lot of people still do, talk about the effects, right? It can be multi-ingredients, terpenes, formulated, crafted, and validated to deliver a certain effect and design and sell this beverage in a certain condition, right? We have clients manifesting to sell the beverage for in a stadium, and they argue an NBA game will have a different effect or experience than the baseball game, right? So could we even design something that to fit both games and give the audience a enjoyable experience? I think that's where multi-active combination and knowing what active to combine, and then make them into a stable beverage, and knowing each ingredient, what kind of factor, pH, temperature, oxygen, what kind of factor will break it, and then stabilize it, and then in the end, we need to do a validation. This is where leveraging pharmaceutical process, PK/PD, right? Understanding this is like not only a drink now, it's a pharmaceutical like product. Give people a certain effect. How can we measure the efficacy when you drink it, in the blood? And how do we measure the efficacy in the feeling, right? So this year, we are designing a foundation to measure the high, right? There are many pairs of feelings and mood. It's very hard to measure it, but somebody needs to come out and measure it. So we are doing this foundation work. It's a little slower, but hopefully all this can put together and from a center of experience design, right? So we can continue to deliver new experience through beverages.
Right, yeah.
I think moving beyond THC as well, a big component of it is building trust with the greater public, removing stigma and and any reputation of just being something that you're of course has medicinal effects, but you're still getting high off of. When somebody can view, like Harold's talking about, a drink as a pharmaceutical product, that means they know what they're getting. They know actually how many milligrams they're getting, that it's in a certain bioavailable form. They're not going to get a bunch of heavy metals or pesticides. And this goes back, I think, as well to generally moving beyond THC and getting to that level. Kind of goes to hark back to the nerd part of it, to standardized compliance. And so if it's ISO 9000 on the production side and GMP again, and really building that trust with the end consumer, that when they see something, they know it's not a lie or a marketing gimmick, that it's what's on that that can or that bottle, they can trust that just like they can on a bottle of Tylenol.
What I would add to that is we work with every cannabinoid, and I think it's super exciting, some of the more complex formulations that many of our brands are bringing to market. But on that's on the positive side. On the shadow side, one of the things that I have a concern about is what's the safety record for what is wrapped around our cannabinoid molecules? And so one of the things that we definitely focus on is that all of our ingredients are GRAS compliant, have long safety records. But I've done diligence on some other technologies for, water compatible delivery systems. Thought about potentially acquiring some other technologies and bringing them into our company. And I have found molecules that are being pushed into the market that are unregulated, that there's no history of safety in the human body. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us in the industry just to be really clear on what we are offering to the public to put in their bodies. Like this is medicine. We're putting molecules in people's bodies, and not only the base, the active molecule, but any enhancers, emulsifiers, carriers that we wrap around those molecules need to have proven safety and efficacy records, and that's not 100% the case out there.
No, it's a really good point. And, like we know this conference will talk a lot about safety as well. And so, I guess at the end of the day here, then, what does it really take to take these breakthrough research projects and these studies, these innovations that you guys are all doing and working on, and really take them through commercialization to market?
What it really takes, I don't know,
Make it stick.
but I can share my personal experience. I'm lucky to have a team that I can trust, especially our management team. So I'm in charge of thinking way here, and my partner is their responsibility to pull me back here, and so we can have a debate and to see where does the industry, and of course we talk to many clients, see where their pain point is, where do they want to innovate next 6 to 12 months, and find that sweet spot. And that is the problem we need to solve. And yes, we don't have millions of dollars to do research, but if we lock that target problem we want to solve, I say curiosity and creativity come in. We will find every methods. We will talk to every partner and to solve that. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, I think it takes great partnerships and collaborations. I mean, like Mike Hennessy from Wanda Brands is here in the audience, and we have a 5+ year collaboration with Mike and his team. We are about to publish some PK/PD study data, which is super interesting. But we couldn't do this alone without great partners. And I'll tell a funny story. Like in this business, things never go according to plan. Our first launch was in Massachusetts, when Massachusetts was a new medical market. And when you think about adoption of innovation, there's the bowling alley analogy, right? You get one bowling pin and knock over the next, and the innovation moves into the market. So our first market was through one of the MSOs in Massachusetts. Well, Nancy Whiteman, the CEO of WANA, toured that MSO, and we weren't in the facility on that day, but the person who ran operations in that facility very kindly said we had a great solution. And Mike and his team tested us, and I think about 24 others. But you have to have partnerships to get these innovations out there. But I did say I was never going to Colorado. Colorado is already a mature market, and I'm like, we're going to skip Colorado, and Colorado, boom, was our second market, our highest velocity, highest volume market. So you just got to always pivot, because everything changes.
I love that, pivoting, critical.
Yeah, and I think, you've got to be agile and be able to pivot, but you also have to have a decent forecast, and frequently those forecasts are, not going to be, they're never going to be exactly what it's going to be. And to be able to pivot, commenting on what both you guys are talking about, it's absolutely critical collaboration, because the best way we can get any of those forecasts honed in is, trying to design it ourselves. So be it in a regulatory environment, or, be it in, what consumer demands are going to be, pushing things toward where we think they're going to be and where we want them to be able to actually take advantage of it and have to pivot the smallest amount possible.
Yeah, that's right. Try to pivot less, but be ready to pivot all the time. Okay, so I would love to move into one of my favorite topics, which is, beyond the science, beyond the strategy of the business or the capital and the constraints, is the role of leadership in all of this. And you here are all strong leaders, and I know we all have a lot of strong leaders in the room here. But I would love to understand, what does courageous leadership look like in this type of environment? And when you're really trying to move bold ideas across the finish line in such an unforgiving market. Like, what is bold leadership, or what does courageous leadership look like?
I think it looks like a lot of things, but looks like being able to admit when an error has been made or when the plan has changed, and then dealing with reality. I'm sure we've all put together financial models that don't play out exactly how they should have in Q4 or Q5. And you've just got to be able to deal with reality and make the hard decisions, like what was being discussed about having to let your best friend go, or having to, cut the team, sometimes for the survival of the company and honestly the survival of the industry. Those decisions have to be made. And so, it's kind of a general cop-out, but I think being able to make the hard decisions and admit you're wrong sometimes is probably the most important characteristic at this point.
And you said something really nice there too, which is facing the facts, which I think is really critical. Like sitting there, facing what's real and naming what's real. That's about all we can do, right? We can just, what we're saying, what we're thinking, and how we're responding to what's happening, and how we're managing our emotions when it does. So,
yeah, I was going to expand on that. I love the analogy of the Stockdale paradox: confront the brutal facts, but never lose faith, that Jim Collins writes about in Good to Great. But I think actually bold leadership in an industry this important and this uncertain actually requires great humility and no bullshit, because there's plenty of that out there, and just a constant stance of humility, because there's so much we don't know, and you always have to put quality and patient safety first.
Yeah, and that sounds like, to me, I hear you just describing everything that it requires to be trusted. So, making sure that the decisions you're making for yourself are also keeping in mind the decisions you're making for your employees, or even for the people that you're serving that are going to use your end product. So, thanks for saying that.
One book I read recently, one sentence really struck me. Your job is not to prove, your job is to improve. And I take that to my heart. And also, when we have a new team, either experienced operator or new technician, we often tell them, hey, you're here not to prove, you're here to improve. If you're here to prove, you're stuck into your own, I know this, I've done that before, this is my idea, right? But if you're here to improve, you're open to opportunities, to making mistakes and hear feedbacks. So I think that go back to the humility side. But also, I think cannabis made all of us human, and it makes me a better human. So I think honor the cannabis magic, Yes, I love it.
Love it. That's great. Well, look, I want to give everyone some time for some questions if you so desire. But, this panel was obviously the first one here at CannMed, and I think that's for a reason. We are all going to talk about a lot of science, but we are here to move science forward. So let's not forget that, and let's continue to lead with humility, continue to build collaborations and partnerships here, and have a great time. That's it. Thank you, Pat.
Before we take questions, I just want to make an announcement. The Wi-Fi network, if you've been looking for that, is Wyndham, and the access code is CannMed25.
Thanks. This question is probably for Harold and maybe Kimberly. There's been some chatter online about including emulsion ingredients on the cans that these products end up in. I know they're there in exceedingly small amounts. What's your feeling on that? Is it okay to divulge what you're using in your emulsion formulations on the can?
So at Azuca, we believe that you have to disclose your ingredients.
Period.
Good. So every batch of we have Organic 3, Organic 4, two main formulas. Every batch we sell, our TDS, technical data sheet, we list all the ingredients from the descending order, right? Either to list those on the label is our clients, they're consulting with their lawyers. So we are, for example, in Canada, we have a good market share in Canada. Health Canada have to let you review everything, right? Even down to preservative and antioxidants. So Health Canada's beverage is a very long list. But that is not honored in our market here. And that's why we need more regulations. And also, when the alcohol distributors, alcohol retailers come into the space, looking at this space, I think that's a natural push for better regulation, and especially potency, stability, the quality of the flavor, and also labeling. Yeah, it will come.
I just want to thank you all for a great discussion so far. My name is Morgan Kiefer. I'm with 82LA, and earlier Andrea asked the panel how to maintain integrity and be able to utilize shortcuts without basically compromising quality, compromising integrity. And I did hear Harold answer that, but I didn't hear the other two panelists answer, so I just wanted to hear a little bit more from each of you about that topic. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a great question. I'll go back to we're putting medicine in people's bodies, so you just don't take any known don't take shortcuts, right? Quality and safety is a core value for our organization. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's non-negotiable in my world.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to agree with you 100%. It's like we don't have the ability to take shortcuts anymore, and like was commented on earlier about standardized compliance. It's like at this point, this is why from a fertilizer standpoint, ISO 9000 is all of a sudden so important, because if you have a cultivator 10 years ago, great, you lose a lot, it's one thing. You lose a flower lot now, and that's $500,000 that's rejected by a lab that's not getting bought out for compliant results. Maybe the company goes under. And so really a lot of the Wild West R&D of 10, 15 years ago has that just doesn't exist anymore. It's non-negotiable.
Right. It's things like I mentioned before, like all of your ingredients are known safe ingredients. They're GRAS compliant. Things like CGMP standards for your production and your partners in production. Just like basic quality discipline.
And I think that this will all play in as well to removing the stigma and the taboos on the industry and pushing everything more toward being generally accepted. Like I think the demographic and at this conference probably accepts cannabis as a medicine, but you go into rural Argentina, like cannabis is definitely not accepted as a medicine, and we've still got a long way to go there, and those shortcuts can't happen, and honestly very, very infrequently happen at this point, in my opinion.
And like you said, I think a lot of it has been filtered out over the years. But I would, even Kim, think about when we first started working together, transparency is really what's critical. Because remember, when I was at GTI, I was like, we must have animal studies, right? And Kim, you were like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, love you. She said no to me at GTI, like 4 years ago,
5 years ago,
five
yeah,
years
probably.
ago.
Yeah.
GTI has now onboarded our products. I think we're in every state. If we haven't launched yet, we will be in every state with GTI. And your standard was a valid standard, which was you wanted blood data. And we didn't have any at the time. We had sensorial data because those studies are very expensive. And as we grew, and we now have lovely data. But that was a rational standard for you to have. And I hope that more innovators have access to things like the PK/PD studies that Harold and I both know are very expensive and take forever. But it's a wonderful evolution in the industry. What I'll also add is sometimes like we get a little bit gloomy and doomy because things are so hard right now on every front, regulatory front and capital front. But like if you pull back and look big picture at cannabis, like I've been in it 7 or 8 years, so I'm tired and I've hit the wall a million times, and we know how hard it is. But if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, we are in like maybe the first inning in this industry, right? We have just like barely scratched the surface of the potential of the plant and the future of what this plant will bring to society. So like we got to like pull up and say like, hey, we got lots of opportunity ahead of us. We're just scratching the surface.
And again, we talked about stigma. I'm hearing like all these, these key words, and that all does come back to trust. And part of the trust, like I said, is the communication, the transparency, the sincerity, the integrity. And it's clear that's why you guys are still here, 7, 8, 10 years. That you guys are still, your companies are still here. And it's like that is really, when I think about what it takes to really take breakthroughs through, it's through strong leadership and holding up to your core values and your mission and your vision, and staying true to that and communicating that forward with your team and to your consumers.